So you've decided you want to go buy a home. You want to go buy a piece of real estate, and you know that you're going to need some financing, some mortgage financing that's going to go along with that to help you complete your transaction. The very first thing that's going to be asked of you after that decision is made is, have you completed the mortgage pre-approval process? And you may be thinking to yourself, well, what is the mortgage pre-approval process? What's entailed in this process? How long does it take to complete the process? And, once I'm done with the process, how long is it good for? My name is Matthew Thorne. I'm a 25-year lending veteran, and we're going to cover some of these details and why the mortgage pre-approval process, you really want to make sure it's not only done, but done correctly. If you like this information, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons as well. And you're going to want to watch to the end because we're going to cover the 4 steps in here, and you want to get through to the 4th step. We're going to talk about what the process is. We're going to talk about what is entailed in this process, what's involved, what do I need to bring and document around that. How long does this process take? Is there a time frame that's tied to this? And last but not least, how long is that process good for? How long is that pre-approval good for? All right, so the main question, what is the mortgage pre-approval process? Well, being pre-approved can mean a lot of different things, and you want to really work with a seasoned lender that's going to take the time to kind of go through this. I'll share a horror story with you that I hear more frequently than I care to admit, is that I called my bank. I'll hear from a client, and they call their bank. They had a 5-7 minute conversation with their banker over the phone, or whoever answered the phone at the bank. They pulled my credit and they issued me a pre-qualification letter. And now I'm going to go out shopping. This is really not the best way to complete this process because there's so much more involved in the lending world when it kind of comes down to what we call as the 3 pillars of mortgage financing, or when we're coming through this loan decision. Those 3 pillars are credit, income, and assets. We call it internally the CIA of lending: credit, income, and assets. And you're going to want to make sure that someone is looking through and vetting those 3 areas with documentation and processes, and having someone sign off on it to make sure that is in place. Having that mortgage pre-approval not only completed but completed correctly is going to set the foundation for how the rest of this transaction is going to transpire. If you get this all locked up, then everything will go much, much more smoothly. The horror stories I hear is that once they're under a contract, these people who just have that short conversation, take that piece of paper from that banker and then go and make an offer on the home. Now they're then supplying their support documentation. Then additional questions are coming in. Now questionable pieces are coming up on whether they can still be pre-approved. And the levels of stress that we see add to someone's already stressful transaction is monumentous. And just, most of these transactions are for your personal homes, and this is your personal place. And by having that additional stress, it's going to make this transaction seem that much more difficult to process through. Okay, so now we know what the mortgage pre-approval process is. So what does it entail? What's involved here? So the very first step is going to start with the application. This is just point A, critical first step, was collect that application, where it's going to ask you about a 2-year resident history, 2-year employment history. It's going to go through some other specific and ask you some roundabout declaration types of questions as well. A really solid loan officer is going to take the time to go through these details with you step by step. If you have your lender has an online application, we really recommend that you start with an online application. That's how we like to refer our clients to start, because it's really going to be helpful in taking you step by step and prompting you to get as much of this information completed up front. Now, the reason why a loan officer is going to want to go over these details with you and maybe ask you more questions about it is to see if there's anything that may come up from an underwriting perspective. Being a 25-year veteran, there may be things that you may answer a question for that I may hear that may trigger me to ask more questions. Now, you may ask, why are you asking all these questions? Why do you have to go this deep? Because an underwriter may hear or going to see these same things, and these are the underwriting questions we're going to want to make sure that come through. having details in place for your 2-year resident history. Have you moved many times? Is there a reason why that is? 2-year employment history. How have we been doing the last 2 years? Now that it might go into more of income questions as well. How are you paid? How often are you paid? Is it a base pay? Is it hourly paid? Is there overtime involved? Is there bonuses or commissions? Are you self-employed? How long have you been self-employed? Are you in the same line of work? There's lots of different little variables that are going to come out in the wash as we go through this application process. And a good loan officer is going to want to make sure that we have drilled this down and asked the questions that we perceive an underwriter to ask, because there's lending guidelines and there's qualification specifications of what you can qualify for income. Now, you may know that every month you come home and you're taking $5,000 or $6,000 every month. But how is that delivered? Has that been consistent for the previous 2 years? Does it look like it's going to continue for the next 3 years or more? There's a continuation of income that we need to make sure that we're looking at. And we need to make sure that we are calculating what they call as an ability to repay. These are a lot of things from the Dodd-Frank bill that came out with the last lending downturn, where ability to repay is making sure that we have a good, solid foundation for you that gives you the best chances of being qualified where you need to be. And this may help us reset some expectations on purchase prices, monthly payments, out-of-pockets, and how those pieces are involved. Now, the online application piece may be very impactful also for helping us collect some data. Your employer may use a third-party HR or human resources department where we may be able to pull down some income documentation on our own to help limit what we have to ask you for. The online application may have some automated systems to pull some assets that may help also reduce the documentation that needs to be required from you in that application. That's why it's so critical to start at that point. Okay, so now we've gotten through we got the process started. We know what we need to get on that. My lender has sent me a good list of items that I want to make sure that I've compiled for them, and I've sent those to them. How long does it take? Now that we've got everything in, so as soon as we get everything back from our request is when this time frame starts. But it's usually about 72 to 96 hours, 3 to 4 days, for us to get this information, put it in our system, but then we're going to have an underwriter review that. We call this being fully underwritten. Now, why is that so important? Because it's going to give that underwriter time to look through that detail and see if there's anything that we have missed or additional questions. They may say, hey, I just have some concerns here, or there may be more to this story back here that I want to know about before I would pull that, give you that full approval. And we want to do that early. We want to do that before we get into contracts on homes. Because again, buying a home is one of the most stressful things that you can really go through. And we don't want to add to that. We want to have confidence going into that moving forward. So we really recommend going through this fully pre-approved process just to make sure that this is just locked in and ready to go. And again, it takes about 3 to 4 days, maybe sooner, depending on your situation and your scenario. Now, when you do this and you complete this fully pre-approved process, the credit piece is now locked in. And now we can concentrate on what we call as the collateral, or the real estate, the fun pieces. I know where to look. I know what my payments are going to be. I know predominantly what my out-of-pocket expenses are going to be. It's going to take that confidence level to just a new height for you, and you're going to feel more comfortable on what you are doing next. And the last piece is the infamous question is, how long is this pre-approval good for? Now, I'm going to give you the technical answer that'll kind of go through the time frames of what some documents are good for and credit reports and things of that nature. Then I'm going to give you more of the theoretical answer on that. So technically, you have about a 30 to 120 day shelf life on paycheck stubs and bank statements. Those usually have about a 30, 60 day shelf life to them. Your credit report is good for about 90 to 120 days. Now, if we get started early on the process, that's fine. What we as a lender do not want to do is keep pulling credit and keep requesting additional documentations. We want to do this in the beginning, make sure we have that stage set. So here's the theoretical answer. As long as you don't quit your job, stop paying your bills, go spend all your money, nothing is really going to change on that pre-approval for you unless you change something. Now, can you change jobs during the transaction? Technically, yes, as long as you're staying in the same line of work and your pays are not changing from a base pay to a variable pay or going self-employed. It's not going to kill your deal. You want to make sure your lender knows that you're going through this. Hey, I may have an opportunity. I've been made a job offer. That's okay. Talk to your lender and to make sure that you guys know what's going through. But that time frame is really kind of up to you. We really suggest that you start early. Start early. Make sure that you get in the know. There may be some credit advice that we can give you to help you kind of get in a better position for programs or rates. We're going to make sure that there's things that we need to work on, that we're doing that. We have time to do that. The last thing you want to do is feel like you can't move forward and pull that back, but you want to know what you can do moving forward, and having that pre-approval done, fully underwritten in place, is going to make you feel that much stronger about moving on to that next step.